Michael, your comments, could you elaborate, if you will, on this pivot towards crushing free speech of people with whom the Lula government and the Supreme Court Justice disagrees?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, so I had an opportunity to interview the current president of Brazil in 1994. I asked him directly if he intended in his version of socialism for Brazil to engage in the kind of censorship and totalitarianism that we see in Cuba. And he was very adamant that he was not going to do that. And my interview with him, by the way, was not the only time that he had said that he would not pursue that level of censorship. Contrast that to his behavior since taking office. Last year, shortly after taking office, Lula created two agencies, the National Prosecutor's Office for the Defense of Democracy, under the supervision of the Attorney General, and it had this Orwellian named Department for the Promotion of Freedom of Expression with extraordinary censorship powers. I would also note that in all 50 instances where this Office for the Defense of Democracy demanded censorship in the first two-thirds of 2023, according to Revista Oeste last December, and it's a quote, all related to unfavorable information or criticism of the government, the members of the government who had called former President Dilma Rousseff's impeachment a coup, for example, never underwent any investigation. So the idea that there is somehow some effort to neutrally apply anti-misinformation or anti-disinformation laws is disabused by this particular case. We see so many of the things that they're doing, fake fact-checking websites that create predicates for censorship. We see in October 2022, before the second round of presidential elections, Lula's lawyer created a report claiming that supporters of Lula's opponent had created a disinformation ecosystem, leading the TSE to indict and censor 55 prominent individuals. That we also know that they created something called the Núcleo de Inteligência, a secret police force within the TSE to engage in creating predicates for censorship. So this is beyond anything that I had seen around the world, and we saw some very scary stuff in the United States. This is an extreme form of censorship that is, in my view, approaching what they do in Cuba.
Paulo, if I could ask you, has anyone raised complaints with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights or the rapporteur on freedom of expression of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights?
Yes, hundreds. I'd say 100 people. There are at least one here. I did at least two, actually, three people here that did file complaints. I did one myself. I'm filing a new one next week. My attorney is also here present. And unfortunately, they have been sitting on these cases, and it's a very sad thing to say. Their latest report says nothing about the violations and that are ongoing in Brazil. I mean, you could approach it through different ways, saying that some of these violations are not consensual. I think that's a proper way to describe it, but you need to mention it. They forgot to mention everything, and the problem is that they're mostly funded by US. So the US is funding an institution that it's clearly not doing its job, and it's not the first time. They haven't been doing their job in a long, long time, or doing a poor job like they did in Peru, or I can stay here and talk about other countries as well, but the OAS is, and many of the people that are on the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights are connected to the Brazilian Supreme Court justice. At least one key figure is connected to Gilmar Mendes, which is another important figure from the Brazilian Supreme Court that supports most of Moraes' actions. So it's a sad thing.
Let me ask you with regards to a study by the Committee to Protect Journalists, an independent nonprofit organization that advocates for press freedom worldwide, as we all know. Brazil ranks 10th in the list of countries where murderers of journalists are most likely to escape punishment. It came out in a report just recently released, February 29th. Matter of fact, the headline was, Haiti joins list of countries where killers of journalists most likely to go unpunished. Can any of you share any light on that very, very disturbing acknowledgement by the committee?
I think you have a thing or two to say about that as well, right? It's on your report.
Can I?
Yeah.
So one piece of information that I bring in my testimony is the fact that Reporters Without Borders has recently released their latest ranking on the global press freedom, where Brazil moved up 20 positions from 2022 to 2023. That is to say, after Bolsonaro left
But
power.
from what to what? What are they now?
Say again?
What's their current number?
Current number is, I think, 62. I can check.
Well, and
84. 62 is the US, but they are in the same tier.
right, and if I can, Mr. Chairman, add that this organization is also funded by George Soros, also funded by the Oak Foundation and the Ford Foundation.
And the Committee to
it's a
Protect
circle.
Journalists-
It's a circle. They support their own narrative and they fund their own narrative.
And the Committee to Protect Journalists is independent.
It
And
is.
they have now ranked them as number 10.
It's hard to say who funds who, right? But it's
Number 10 isn't very good, believe me.